Anybody got a Bible? If you got a Bible, open it with me. We're in the front. It's called Genesis. We're in a story of a guy named Joseph. He's the 11th son of a guy named Jacob, or Israel is his other name. He is the preferred son of Jacob. He certainly gets the most run in our Bibles. And from his story, we've been talking about making lemonade. Anybody been here for this? If you've been here for this, you know that we just borrowed, a 100-year-old saying that started in our country back in like 1915 is when it first appears. When life gives you lemons, make lemonade. And it's just a principle of life in general, but certainly a theological truth that we meant to, grasp and hold on to as we go through the unavoidable downs of life. Everybody had some? Anybody had a couple downs? I want to be, everybody's like, it's a downer service. No, it's not. It's it's an honest service. Everybody goes through it. You're either coming out of it, in it, or headed into it. That's life. And Joseph has had his fair share. For the first 17 years, apparently free skate. He's been doing awesome. But then his jealous brothers kind of start a cycle that will last pretty much for 13 years of his life. We've talked about some of the places he ends up in this lemon of an experience. He goes to the pit first. Everybody remember that? That's what his brothers threw him in. Then they sell him into slavery, and he ends up at a guy named Potiphar's house, and he meets the wife of this guy, Potiphar, who is promiscuous. I'm trying to clean up some of my more graphic, picturesque language, but she wants to get with Joe. Joe doesn't want to get with her. It'd be dishonoring to God, dishonoring to his boss, and so there's a whole thing there. She trumps up some charges, and then he ends up, as we saw last week, in prison. Okay? So if you're keeping score at home, he's got family problems. Anybody got family problems? Hopefully no one in your family's, selling you into, human trafficking type stuff. But he had family problems. He had work problems, right? He got in trouble at his workplace, Potiphar's house. Anybody got work troubles? Anybody ever had problems at work? Nobody has problems here at our church. It's awesome. There's just that's not true. And then finally, he's got legal troubles. I pray that's not beset you, but he's seen it all. Joseph, he's just turning 28 in the story that we read from him today, but he's had quite a run. If we're honest, we have too, because we all deal with lemons. Peaks turn into valleys. Anybody been there? This is my mom. Mom, back in April, celebrated her last treatment for breast cancer. Yeah, she went through about a year. Yep. All the surgeries you can imagine with that, and all the chemo and the radiation. She's 80 years old, almost 81. And it took a lot out of her, but by God's grace, she got to go to Cleveland Clinic there in Cleveland, Ohio, ring the bell like we do here at Moffitt and other places, and she's got a clean bill of health. There's no cancer in her system. We praise God for that, right? And we were hopeful as a family, my sisters and I and her, for a good run this summer, right? She's got her health back. She's being restored, and things are going great. She was visiting my one sister for Mother's Day in Illinois. And shortly after that, went out with a lifelong friend that she'd made there as she lived in that state. And as she was walking out of the restaurant, she stepped off the curb, fell, and broke her hip. How's it going? Yeah. So she's okay. I was in Africa while it was going on, so we were texting back and forth. But she had her surgery, and everything was as good as a broken hip at that age can be. She didn't even have to go to rehab, right? She's just recovering. And so ups, downs. We think we're on the way back up. And then this past Friday, my sister texts me and says, your mother's in the ER. She's got all kinds of craziness going on in her numbers. She was a dashboard. All the needles would be cranked to the wrong way. And so she's got something wrong internally that's come as a result of all the stress that's been on her body. And we're a kind of morbid humor family. Is anybody a morbid humor family? So I text my mom, and I'm like, hey, lay off the medical professionals. Can you give them a break? This is getting kind of ridiculous. But of course, we're concerned and we care. But it's just one more sign that no matter what phase of life you find yourself in, it's always something, right? You'll just get out of one, and you'll find yourself in the next. And sometimes we're the cause of some of our pain. I just started working out again this past week. I haven't missed one yet, but I'm thinking about it. Anyway, and here's why. I'm 55 years old and I try to sleep at night after working out that morning. I am in pain. Has anybody been back to the gym for the first time in a while? I think it's worse the longer you go, just so you know. And I can hardly lift my arm above my shoulder right now. If I seem sedate, I'm not. I just can't move. Anyway, but sometimes lemons are self-inflicted, but sometimes, listen, lemons just are a part of life. I think I've said that in a couple different ways this morning, but my wife Eleanor is in Kentucky right now. She's hanging out with this guy. This is her father, Byron. He's going to be 93 in a couple months, and he's in a Veterans Administration facility there in Lexington, Kentucky. They take great care of him, and she is so happy to be with him, but he's not the same dude that he was, right? Some of you have been through this with your parents as they aged and passed on. Some of you are in the midst of it with me as we're walking through this with Byron. And every one of you will be there. Lord willing, you'll see your parents age and get to this stage. But every one of us is going to have to say goodbye to parents, right? Which is hard, especially if you like them. And we like Byron a lot. And it's difficult to see him get to points in life where he can't do, right? He can't walk. He can't do anything that you and I take for granted. Can't clean himself, all that stuff. We all will get there, if God allows. And that is a lemon that all of us will face, right? Lemons are a part of life. So I'm so glad, as we've been talking through this series, so grateful to be in a lemon-filled life with a God who is God over those lemons. To be able to walk through the stuff that all of us are going to face, not with God as my co-pilot, with me as his co-pilot, with him steering, with him leading, with him infusing me with the strength that's necessary to do what life requires me to do. It's only God, as we trust in him and walk with him, who can take life's lemons and make the lemonade that he's able to make. If you haven't picked this up in the times that we've shared together, the lemonade he makes may not be the lemonade you want. Everybody gets that, right? We go to these restaurants after we're done here this morning, and you can get like anything in your drink anywhere ever. Like everything is like tailored to you. And lots of us look at life and we think that's what I should have. I should have my order. I should have what I want. God doesn't guarantee you're going to get what you want. But like, St. Mick Jagger, we will get what we need, right? Can't always get what you want, but if you try sometime, you get what you need. So the older people are tracking with me. Okay. He's not a real saint. In fact, pretty far. All right. We don't always get what we want. We rarely get what we expect. Anybody testify? Your life turned out like you thought? Maybe some, right? But parts of it, you're like, wow, didn't see that coming. Didn't know that was going to be a part of this. But let me just assure you that no matter what happens in life, whatever lemons arrive, God will always be enough. He will always give us enough to face the loss of a loved one, to walk through the loss of a relationship, to figure out what happens when the income is no longer there. It's not going to be comfortable, certainly not preferable, but he will always be enough. Today we're going to continue our study of Joseph's life, piggybacking on what we started last week. Last week we asked and answered a question. It's this one: what is God doing in our dark times? I thought it would be important for us to understand what we can expect, not entirely or totally, but three things at least. We know that in our dark times, God is permitting them as he's protecting us through them. That his presence and provision goes with us in all of our dark times. We talked about this last week. And that through our dark times, God is preparing us. He's not wasting them. He's using them to get us ready for next things, to lead us to the plan that he has for us. This week, we're going to talk about what we should be doing in our dark times. We figured out a little bit about what God does, but now we want to look from Joseph's life and glean from him what we should be doing in our dark times. In Genesis 40, we're going to find 4 things. I'm going to put them on the screen, and we're all going to read them out loud together. That's so if you stayed up late last night and you sleep through the rest of this, at least you got the 4 things. Are you ready? Yep. And some of you are like, Mark, silly. I know you sleep sometimes. It's okay. All right. The first one's this. Everybody read it with me. In dark times, make the best of your situation. Joseph's going to teach us that. Already has. Second one, ready? In dark times, take care of those around you. You're not the only one who's going through dark times. And a lot of times, God will provide hope for us through our help of other people. We'll talk about that. In dark times, ready? In dark times, seek help where you can get it. Oh. Seek help where you can get it. I am alarmed at some of us who think that dark times are personal and that they're mine to, navigate. And I shouldn't bring them up to anybody. I don't want to be bothered. But we're going to talk about that. Joseph didn't keep quiet about his stuff. We shouldn't either. The last one's this. Ready? Read it with me. In dark times, be ready for anything and persevere in everything. Okay? Those 4 things. Starting with the first one, which is this. In dark times, make the most of your situation. If you've been paying attention to the last 11 years or so of Joseph's life, as it's been reported to us in the book of Genesis, the Egyptian leg of his lemon tour, he's really made the most of every situation he's found himself in. There's really been 2. It's at Potiphar's house and now in prison. Let's go back to the beginning of chapter 39, where we get an inkling as to how he was able to do this. It's in the first few words of chapter 39, verse 2. It says there that the Lord was what? Was with Joseph. So how was Joseph able to make some lemonade? It's what I've been telling you. He leaned on God. God was with him. He's with all of us always, right? But God was with him, and especially because Joseph leaned into him and looked to him for what he lacked. And it works out. The Lord was with Joseph, verse 2, and he became a successful man at the age of 17, 18 years old, as he was in the house of his Egyptian master. His master saw, verse 3, that the Lord was with him. One more time, the Bible tells us that. And that the Lord caused all that he did to succeed in his hands. What's the force behind Joseph's success? His IQ, his Harvard degree, it's God propelling him and him submitting to God that brought the success he experienced in life. So Joseph found favor, verse 4. Joseph found favor in his sight, in Potiphar's sight, and he attended to him, and he made him, made him, Joseph, overseer of his house, and he put him in charge of all that he had until the wife gets involved and calamity ensues. But even then, once he is sent to prison by Potiphar, we read this last week. If you go back to the end of chapter 39, it says this: the keeper of the prison that Potiphar sends him to puts Joseph, one more time, in charge of all the prisoners who were in prison, right? Lemon's lemonade. I'm in prison, I might as well run the place. Whatever was done there, it says that Joseph, was the one who did it. The keeper of the prison paid no attention to anything that was in Joseph's charge because, here it is again, people. Everybody see it? Why? Because Joseph was such a great administrator. Because Joseph had a laptop and he was able to make charts. No, it was because the Lord was, say it with me, with him. And he was with the Lord. Whatever he did, the Lord made it succeed. Joseph wasn't going to let life live him. He was going to live life. He refused to let his circumstances keep him from flourishing. In both of his stops, he knew that Yahweh, God, was with him, and so he worked with what he had and flourished as a result. We should too. I don't know if you heard that part. Did you hear me when I said that? We should too. Let me give you some tips for making the most of difficult, dark situations. The first one, any self-help book at Barnes & Noble, if that's still alive, is that even open anymore? There is one, right? But all these bookstores that have self-help sections, this is their big message. It's biblical. Stay positive. Stay positive, hopeful, trusting that God is going to work things out somehow. If you go dark, and just kind of get all Eeyore, anybody remember Winnie the Pooh? It's my birthday. Right? If everything's just the worst of the worst and there's no hope, guess what? There's no hope. Nothing's going to come from that. But if you could stay positive, even if things don't come about like you hope or things aren't as you dreamed, you could still make something of what's going on. I used to take, as a youth pastor, I was a youth pastor for about 14 years, and we used to take youth groups on mission trips. Like some of our trips are going out, Josh is going, and I think Brian's already on one in Utah. Anyway, I don't know why we did this, but we always chose to go in July to these, right by the equator countries. So in July one year, we took a bunch of high schoolers to Jamaica, okay? And it is 99 degrees with 4,000% humidity. You know what I'm talking about? It's just miserable, and there's no escaping it. We didn't have air conditioning of any kind. We just stayed in these barns. This is 25, 30 years ago. And it was rough. It was a rough place. And so these high schoolers from Dallas, Texas, North Dallas, Texas, very cushy, comfy high schoolers, had never been in a situation like this in their lives. And on the first day, it was nonstop whining, just complaint and complaint. And so me and the leaders got together and it was like, we're just going to lose morale. We got to do something. And so we made up a rule the next morning. You could not state the obvious. That was the rule we made, okay? So you couldn't say it's hot, right? Couldn't say that. If they said it, rephrase. Well, I don't understand weather, but I think the barometer is falling. Maybe it's climbing. I don't know. And my comfort levels are not at an all-time high, right? And it became kind of funny. Like the funny kids grabbed onto it and they're like, oh, I got one. And they would start defining these, negatives in these crazy positive ways. And we had a blast with it. And the week went okay. You know why? Because every time someone was focused on the negative, we tried to turn it towards the positive. Stay positive in the things that you're experiencing. Be creative. Dark times are going to require you to look at things a different way. Defeat comes from, I can't imagine how this is going to work out. The key word in that sentence, imagine. You turn off your imagination. You turn off your ability to problem solve and create avenues that would bring about a similar result just with less at hand to use. So some of you grew up with less. Some of you won't understand this because you didn't. But when I was growing up, it was a one-income family, and Dad didn't make that much, and so we just didn't have a lot of the extras. Every Christmas, I'd get the 64-pack of Crayola. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Come on, man, but that had to last me all year. And I loved, as a little kid, 7, 8 years old, I loved drawing. We just didn't have a lot of money to go out and buy the paper or the sketch pads that some of us are used to having to actually draw on. And so I don't know where my mom learned this, but one day I said, Mom, I really want to draw. I don't have any paper. And she went to where we saved everything. Does anybody grow up in the house where you saved everything? Every paper bag was gold. Don't throw that out. Well, I would go to school and I would have to bring back my Glad bags. I would reuse Glad bags. My mom would wash them. Those were really funny on the drawing rack. But we reused everything. And my mom, I still remember one of the first times I saw her do this. She took the butcher knife and she grabbed one of the paper bags that we'd gotten groceries in, and she just starts slicing it. And she cuts along all the edges until basically the bottom of the paper bag is removed. I left it on here so you could kind of see. But then she unfolds the rest of the paper bag, and we don't use the part with the logo on it because you can't color over that. But voila. How about this as a canvas, Mark? And I'm like, that's a paper bag. She's like, shut up. Anyway, she wasn't big on mercy. But I still have things from my childhood that I drew on paper bags. Why? Because my crafty mom was like, that's not a paper bag anymore. That is a creation station. And it became what I drew on, right? Others have other means by which they create and produce positive outcomes and otherwise negative experiences. But we got to be creative. We got to be positive. We got to be creative. But most of all, we got to be courageous. Courage. How are you with yours? Most of us have courage in things up to here. But if we go past this line, it's like, I don't know. And God agrees with you. You don't know. You won't have what it takes to do this stuff. But he does. And if you can trust him, he'll infuse you with the courage that you are required to have to get through whatever you're facing. Let me tell you this real quick. If you're having a hard time with developing courage, find courageous people around you and let them inspire you with how they've been courageous in their life. So I'm like 16 years old, and I'm walking through my high school gymnasium. I was a sophomore, and I was a starter on the varsity basketball team. I was all that and several bags of chips. And so I was walking to the locker room that I had in my possession in the varsity locker room, and a ping pong ball comes out of nowhere. And I can't remember if it hits me or if it just bounces in front of me, but it stopped me where I was going. I looked over from the direction from whence it came, and I noticed that all of the special ed kids from our school, my high school, were basically enjoying lunch in the gymnasium while the rest of the school was eating in the cafeteria. And I guess I'd seen them before, but I'd never really taken notice. But this ping pong ball hits me, and I grab it, and I just hold it up. And the teacher waves me over and says, Donnie hit that. And across the table from this special ed teacher was Donnie. Donnie was a couple years older than me and loved to play ping pong. Rarely made contact, but if he did, it was going across the gym. He had cerebral palsy, still does. Every bone in his body was crooked. He couldn't talk, hardly. It would take him a long time to say a sentence. But he loved to laugh, I found out, because the teacher told me, he said, Saunders, that's what they called me back in school. I need you to play ping pong with Donnie. I got to run to the office real quick. And so it was like a voluntold. I wasn't asked. I was like, here's your paddle. And so I'm like, all right. So I start playing ping pong with this guy. And most of the time he misses it, and I have to run behind him to grab the ball. But one time, finally, his superpower was just springy arms, and he just smacks this thing. And that's the first time I heard Donnie laugh. And Donnie laughs better than anybody in this room. Donnie was like, it was like a really deep guttural thing, right? Like just from his toes, right? And he's laughing because he's made me run across the gym to get the ball for him, right? Because he's a punk, just so you know. I didn't know that at the time, but I found out because I started doing it pretty much every lunch hour. I'd go and hang out with Donnie and play ping pong. Donnie and I became such good friends. His family started coming to the church that my dad was a pastor at. It wasn't because I was a great Christian. It's just Donnie had a buddy. And so we were around each other a ton at school and at church. And we grew up in northern Maine, and so in the wintertime, the big thing to do up there is snowmobiling. And so one day, Donnie's mom, Carolyn, says, hey, Mark, you want to come over and snowmobile with Donnie? We got a sled. We're going to go out sledding. And I was like, great, because what am I thinking? I'm driving that sled. I got the handicap kid on the back. He's going to be holding on. That's not what's going to happen, people. Because here's the deal. I talked to you about courage. Donnie wasn't going to let any experience that he could do pass by. So he had his own sled. And I'm out there, I got my jeans and my winter coat. I think we're just going to have this like safe, fun little jaunt. And he's in the driver's position. And he just, he waves me on. And I sit on the back of this sled with this kid, and he punches it. I mean, just 0 to all the way, it's a thumb throttle. And we just took off. And in 30 seconds into this ride, he has steered us over a snowdrift like 8 feet high. The sled and us have become detached. I've landed over here. He's landed over here. The sled's on its side over there, right? I think he's dead, Like this is why I should have been driving, Donnie, right? And I come over. He's got a helmet on. I flip up his shield. And what's he do? And he just laughs in my face because he aimed for the snowdrift. And he knew this was going to be a result. I'm a graduate of high school 2 years later. I'm standing in this line to go get my diploma, and Donnie shuffles in. And he gives me a card. I've received many. I think it's the only one I kept. Had a picture of him taped in it. He's on his lawn tractor, right? He drove one of those around too. He's got a 4-wheeler now. Anyway, but he's on his tractor, and he took the time to write his name and say congratulations. Probably took him a long time. And then he put a little gold ball. I should have brought it with me. a little gold ball. I was a basketball player. He won a gold ball for winning the state championship, and we didn't win it my whole high school career. And so he, was very kindly giving me a gold ball. It's still on my keychain. It was a keychain fob. It's still on my keychain. That was 1987. This is Donnie at the Super Bowl party he attended this past winter. He's still going. He goes to work every day. He does everything that he can in life, right? And anytime I'm like, I can't. It's too hot. This won't work. God brings to mind my buddy Donnie. And if God through it, he believes in God, trusts him, but if God through Donnie can do what Donnie did, God through Mark can certainly do something else too, right? So be positive. Be creative, but overall be courageous. Just real quick before I move on to the next one. Our Bible's full, rife with all kinds of make the most of life instructions. Some of them are adjacent to some really familiar verses. Like, does anybody know some verses from the Bible? Like if I started John 3:16, some of you could do it with me, right? For God so loved the world. Okay, some of you know these. So there's like popular verses from the Bible. I call them coffee cup verses because that's usually what the Christian, marketers slap on the cups that we drink out of. Here's one of my favorite coffee cup verses. It's in Jeremiah 29. Anybody know this one? Read it with me. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. How's that for a pick-me-up in the morning, right? That plus caffeine, let's go, right? Yeah. Do you know where that comes from? This is what happens a lot of times with people. They know the verse, they don't know the context at all. Yeah, and so let me introduce you to where this verse comes from. God instructed Jeremiah to say this to the people of Israel, but it might interest you to know where the Israelites were at the time of his saying it. 7 verses prior. Thus says the Lord of hosts. It's how he basically informed the prophets to speak on his behalf to Israel. The God of Israel to all the, what's it say? Exiles who have been, get this part, who have been sent into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. The Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, to all exiles whom I, missed that part, whom I have sent. Remember I told you that God would allow the hard times, but he'd protect you in them? Yeah, this was a hard time that beset his people after their long years of rebellion. He allows them to be conquered by Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar was this guy who came in and just took over. And now they're in captivity in Babylon. They're not living in the promised land that Abraham had been given. They're far from it. And it's just so we know, it's going to be like a couple thousand years, 2,500 years or so, a little more, before their nation is reinstated. It's always going to be an occupied territory until 1948. So this was a big judgment. And these people were in a foreign land. They were illegal. I guess they're legal immigrants. They were taken captive. But they weren't accepted by the people who lived there. It was tough. It was a lemon existence. And God says, hey, to all you who are there by my hand, here's my instruction for you. You ready? He says, build houses and live in them. Plant gardens and eat from them. He says, take wives and have sons and daughters, and take wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage that they may bear sons and daughters, multiply there and do not decrease, okay? He says, seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile. Remember when Jesus said, love your neighbor, love your enemies? Yeah, this is an early form of that. He says, pray to the Lord on that city's behalf, for in its welfare you will find your welfare. Make the most of your situation, Israel. Don't pull in the oars. Keep going. Live life. And pray for those who persecute you, because in their blessing you'll find yours. I don't know if that's your approach to the hard things of life, but that's what God says to you. Hey, don't pull in the oars. Keep going. Pray for solution, pray for redemption, pray for rescue, do all that stuff. But pray for the people who are making this hard for you. And trust God in it as you make the most of your situations. That's where "for I know the plans I have for you" comes from. It comes from that circumstance. All right, let's finish. Ready? Sorry, like, really? No, we're not close. Anyway, in dark times, make the best of your situation. Turn to Genesis 40 with me again, and let's pick up the story. I'll try to go faster here. Joseph, like I've already said, I think a couple times, is 28 years old. We know that because in chapter 41, it's going to be told to us, I think in verse 26, that he's 30 as he takes the helm as the prime minister of Egypt. Spoiler alert, that's next time, okay? But he's 30 years old when that happens. 2 years goes by between the story we're going to read today and that occurring, so he's 28, okay? And if you're keeping score at home, he was 17 when he got thrown in the pit, so 11 years has passed. We don't know how much of it was in Potiphar's house and how much of it was in prison, but he's a 28-year-old man when all of this is going down. It says that sometime after this, after he was put in prison, given control as a leader in prison, it says that the cupbearer of the king of Egypt and his baker committed an offense against their lord, the king of Egypt. We don't have details on this. We don't know if it was just a trumped up charge or it was an insinuation. Perhaps the Pharaoh had a bad meal. We're going to see that both of these guys are involved in the kitchen of the Pharaoh. Perhaps he had a tummy ache after a meal, and he sensed that maybe it was the cupbearer and or the baker who were involved, but we'll get to that in a second. But they're thrown in jail after committing an offense against the Pharaoh of Egypt. Verse 2, the Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. If you're wondering what those titles are, cupbearer is basically like sommelier, if you're familiar with wine. You know, he's the wine expert. He would be in charge of bringing the wine. But not just bringing it. What was his chief job as the cupbearer? He would take a shot off of whatever the Pharaoh was going to drink, and if he survived, the Pharaoh would drink it. Okay? That was his job. He's the chief cupbearer. And the chief baker obviously made bread, but he was in charge of the pantry. He was probably the head chef of some kind, and he was in charge of making sure the food wasn't poisonous. So both of them had that role. But they were both there, and verse 3, Pharaoh put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard. Real quick aside, do you know who the captain of the guard is introduced as at the beginning of chapter 39, verse 1? Potiphar. Some of the books I read this week surmise that perhaps Potiphar's job as the captain of the guard was to run this prison, and so Potiphar took his boy Joseph from the house where his wife was making trouble and just moved him into the prison that he was over. Could be, we don't know for sure, but I thought that was interesting. You're welcome. All right. Some of you are like, what? I'm waking up. What did he say? Anyway, all right. The captain of the guard, verse 4. The captain of the guard appointed Joseph to be with these two prisoners, and he attended them. And they continued for some time in custody with Joseph as their servant. Certainly, if I'm in Joe's role as kind of over everything in the prison, I don't want to be given cupbearer and baker duty. I don't want to have to be like waiting on these guys hand and feet. I don't know if Joseph sees this as kind of a beneath his station or a lesser role, but we know he does it, and it's a good thing that he does because it's going to hinge or bring about everything that becomes his life in the future. All right? Joseph obedient one more time. Verse 5. One night, these guys, the cupbearer and the baker, both had a dream. These guys who were confined in prison, each his own dream and each with its own interpretation. Some of you might have read ahead, and I was like, I wonder if Mark's going to talk about dreams and interpretations. He's not, okay? Not because I don't think dreams can have meanings. Certainly there are many of them in our Bibles that lead to, God doing things, and he kind of points them out in a dream that someone has. For Joseph, he's already had 2 dreams in his life. Do you remember those dreams? One of them was his brothers. They were actually sheaves of wheat bowing before him. The other was astral. He went up in the skies and the stars and the sun and the moon. Those were his parents, his mother and father. They all bowed to him. This got him in trouble. It's what led to the pit, one of the things. But he's familiar with dreams, and so it's like, oh, this is my corner. I'm going to post up, and I'm going to talk to these guys. But these 2 dreams are had. And in ancient Egypt, dreams were a big deal. The ancient Egyptians, in their belief system, saw dreams as a window into the netherworld. It was a way in your sleep to visit the places that were inhabited by their gods. They believed that a pair of dreams, if two dreams were dreamed on the same night with similar, ideas or meanings, that was indicated a certain fulfillment. And there was an entire professional system of dream interpretation in Egypt. Like you could go and get your master's in explaining dreams. They had dream books that were written up that would help them understand, anyway. And so dreams were a big deal in Egypt. So these guys have these dreams. They're troubling them. Verse 6. Who's with me so far? Anybody still with me? Oh, good. Oh, great, Susan. All right, here we go. When Joseph came to them in the morning, so they had these dreams at night, he saw that they were what? Written all over their face, right? Isn't it crazy how our faces communicate more and louder than our words do? Like who raised the kid that you said after they, punched their sister, say sorry to your sister, and your kid said, sorry. All right. Did you kind of step in at that point and say, I don't think you meant that? I said it. Yeah, but your face was saying something else. Your tone was saying something else. Let's try that again. Our faces speak much louder than our words. And so Joseph looks at them and sees that they're troubled. He asks the Pharaoh's officers, verse 7, who are with him in custody in his master's house, why the long faces? Why are your faces so downcast? I find this fascinating because let's not forget 11 years of lemons for Joseph. Would anybody be surprised if he just did the very least for these two bozos, right? And never asked questions of them at all? We wouldn't be surprised at all. Joey's got enough to handle up on his own. But what does he do? He sees their needs and he addresses them. And this is where we get that second thing that we talked about. In dark times, take care of those around you. I would submit this to you. If you're going to make the most of your dark situations, a lot of time it's going to involve you providing for other people in it so that you're not so obsessed with your stuff, with your problems. You become an aid to other people who are walking through difficult times with you, and that's what propels you through the dark times that you're experiencing as well. Joseph's been through a bunch. Have we established that? Anybody? Okay, good. And as someone who's been through a bunch, he can relate to those who are going through a bunch. You know that about yourself? There's certain hurts that you've experienced that I can't speak to in someone else's life, but because you've had them, you can listen to them in ways that they feel heard and understood. And your hurts become salves or healings for those who are going through them after you've experienced them yourself. Joseph saw these guys were having troubles with dreams. I know dreams. I've had a couple of them. Let's figure this out together. And he sought to do for these two guys instead of just stare at his navel and be concerned with himself. Verse 8, they said to him, we've had dreams, and there is no one to interpret them. We can't get to the books. And Joseph says a really interesting thing. Do not interpretations belong to who? Okay, so this is so great. Every once in a while, Joseph pops Yahweh, that's the word actually here in Hebrew, Yahweh, God, into his dialogue. And he does this, I think, very intentionally because A, he understands he's not a dream interpreter. God is, that's his power, right? But B, wherever he can talk about God and inject God into stories or into, day-to-day conversations, that's a good thing. He's preaching, he's proselytizing, he's saying, hey, the God I serve, he's got this. Can I help? And these two guys are like, sure. One of my favorite things to say in counseling situations after I've heard all the details, sordid details, depressing, discouraging details, is to ask this question. So where is God in all of this? I'm not asking a question that I'm looking for a specific answer from. I'm just trying to get the person to think after hearing all of this stuff that is horrible about life and my marriage is falling apart and all these things. I don't have a whole lot of wisdom to offer, but if I can get us on the God track and get us thinking about what God would say about this, well, now we're on to something. So that's my question. So where do you think God is in all of this? And a lot of times it starts out, not here, and they're like yelling at God. But I'm like, okay, but what might God want from this or want from you or for you in this? And how might he use this? And that's what I did yesterday morning. I met with a young guy. He doesn't go to our church. but he found me and started talking to me. His marriage has been in trouble for 3.5 years. He's been married to his wife, and just recently she stepped out on him. It was someone else, and it's been very difficult, as you can imagine, right? But he's still in there, hanging on, right? But periodically we sit down and have some coffee. I ask him how he's doing, and we talk about it. And what did I do yesterday? Anyone want to guess what I did yesterday? I think maybe I talked about Joseph just a little bit. Yeah, hey, you know what I'm preaching tomorrow? And I basically preached the sermon to this young man. And I talked to him about how, hey, make the most of this situation and care for her. I know that's hard because she's the one who's done the hurt, but care for her. And do these things that may seem counterintuitive and nobody in the world would expect you to do. But when God writes about these things or speaks about these things, these are the things that he says to do because he loves us. It was a hard conversation, but a good one. Why? Because its point, its direction was in the direction of our God. All right, verse 9. See if you can help some other people as the hard things come. Verse 9. So the chief cupbearer tells his dream to Joseph and says to him, in my dream, there's a vine before me. And on that vine, there's 3 branches. And as soon as that branch budded, its blossoms shot forth and the clusters ripened into grapes. And Pharaoh's cup was in my other hand. And I took the grapes and I pressed them into Pharaoh's cup and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. It's a work dream. You ever have work dreams? Okay, so he's at work. He's kind of watching this like, those videos that you can see on YouTube or something goes in the ground and they fast forward it until it's like, this huge thing and they're picking tomatoes off. Okay, he's basically watching that happen. Fast forward, sprouts become grapes. I'm squeezing them and this is his dream. And Joseph says to him, well, here's the interpretation. Here's what's up. Those 3 branches, 3 days. 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office. And you shall place Pharaoh's cup in his hand as formerly you did when you were his cupbearer. Good news. You're getting out of prison. You're heading back to the palace. You're back, baby. Your head has been lifted up. It's pretty great. Now the baker's going to get in there and ask for his interpretation in a couple verses. But something in the next 2 verses happens that has not happened yet in the story of Joseph. 11 years. Let's read it together. You ready? I'm picturing the cupbearer kind of doing some woo-hoos. Ric Flair. Woo! Right? He's doing the whole thing. And he's dancing around his cell because, this is good news. He's going to get out of jail in 3 days. And Joseph's trying to calm him down, and this is what he says to him. He says, hey, cupbearer, remember me. He uses the word only. I'm not asking for a whole lot. I don't want you to pay me. You don't have to come back and visit. All I'm asking, only, remember me. When it's well with you, and please do me the kindness of mentioning me to the Pharaoh so as to get me out of this house. Why? For I was indeed stolen out of the land of the Hebrews. I'm not supposed to be here. My brothers took possession of me and sold me. And here also I've done nothing since I've been here that should put me into, and it's really interesting, he says the same word that he talks about in his first story. He says the pit. He doesn't say prison. He literally says the pit. Some scholars think it's because prisons back then were sometimes emptied out cesspools, septic tanks, okay? And that's where they would put the prisoners. Who wants to go to prison? Anybody? Joe's just kind of making a parallel observation of the last 11 years of his life. It's been one long pit, right? From the first pit till now. But whatever the case, he says to the cupbearer, he's like, hey, bro, will you remember me? Is that a song? I think that's a song. Yep. I'll keep going. Yeah. It's the only time that we see Joseph do this in his story. And I think it's so important for us to note it because here's what it is. In dark times, you and I need to seek help where we can get it. And this is the part I really want you to get today. So if you're just waking up, get this. You are not designed to go through the lemons of life alone. I know you come in here, many of you, and you sit anonymously in the same black chair, and you don't talk to anybody on the way in, you don't talk to anybody on the way out. And you go through life without the comfort of the people of God to walk with you through the downs, the dark times of life. And that's one of the greatest travesties that I can think of in the church. In fact, can I share with you a pastoral pet peeve? It's finding stuff out after the fact. Listen, I'm not going to be the clearinghouse of everybody's life and situations and stuff. It doesn't have to always be me, but it needs to be someone. Like, you shouldn't go through a divorce, a battle with cancer, joblessness, and just kind of, grit your teeth and bear it on your own without letting somebody from the body of Christ know, and certainly without letting our God know, right? That's just not how we're designed to work. And so now I'm making this proclamation. There will be no hurt of anybody in Bay Life that goes unshared. Listen, this is not a permission for you to be whiners. I'm not saying go out there and just whine. This is not you going on Facebook right now. Good, pastor told me, here's all my list. Blah. Okay? I'm not telling you to be whiners, but I am telling you, don't be loners. Don't walk through this life without the help of your God and the help of his people. Joseph saw in this cupbearer an opportunity. So of course he's going to ask. We're going to find out that it doesn't work right away. But you have not, James tells us, because you ask not. You got to speak. You got to get the help where you can find it. Last thing's this. Well, let me do the chief baker story real quick. It's kind of sad. Everybody ready for sad? Here it comes. When the chief baker saw that the interpretation for the cupbearer was favorable, he says to Joseph, I got a dream. There were three cake baskets on my head, and then the uppermost baskets were all sorts of baked food for the Pharaoh. But from that basket, the birds were eating. And they dive bombed, what's going on in my head. And Joseph's like, enough. He answers him and said, well, here's the interpretation, and sorry. The three baskets are another 3 days. So both of them have 3-day dreams. And he says to him, in 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head, like the cupbearer, except different. He's going to lift up your head from you. You're going to end in 3 days. He's talking about decapitation. Sorry, enjoy your lunch. And then he's going to hang your body from a tree, which was how pharaohs would send a message, don't mess with Pharaoh. They would execute someone and then just leave them out there for the birds to peck his skin as a sign to anybody who might be considering crossing him. All right, enough of that. You got the 2 dreams? You're welcome, yeah. Verse 20. On the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, probably not his actual life birthday, probably the anniversary of his coronation. In Egypt, if you became Pharaoh, guess what else you became? A god. Whether it was as a prince that you were seen as a god, or certainly once you became, kind of like in North Korea, that guy became the president and the god of North Korea. That's kind of how it was in Pharaoh times. And so here on this celebration of his coronation, probably, he makes a feast for all of his servants. Everybody in the palace is invited to celebrate Pharaoh. And he indeed lifts up the head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker among his servants. So I'm picturing him bringing these 2 guys out. He says, you guys, we've done the investigation. I thought both of these guys were, guilty of whatever crime they committed. But we've determined through, exhaustive investigation that the cupbearer is cool, and you guys need to take the baker outside. So he restores the chief cupbearer to his position, and he places the cup in Pharaoh's hand. He's back at the work. But he hangs the chief baker outside after taking his head, as Joseph had it interpreted for them. Everybody remember what we've talked about so far? In dark times, make the most of your situation. Okay? In dark times, be there for other people. Take care of those around you. In dark times, seek help where you can get it. This is the last one. In dark times, be ready for anything and persevere in everything. Listen, I don't know if you read the Bible sometimes and you're like, really? He did this? Anybody done that with someone in the Bible? You're like, seriously? This is how he's going to roll? Because that's not what I would do. Let me share the last verse of chapter 4 with you, and maybe you'll pick up what I'm putting down. After all this has happened, the one thing Joseph asks of the chief cupbearer, what's he do? He doesn't do it. says, yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, and he forgets him. And if you go to the next chapter, the next verse tells us it's 2 years. 2 years until he suddenly remembers who Joseph is, and Joseph's story changes. Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm really hopeful for something to happen and it doesn't happen, I'm going to need some time. Are you with me? I'm going to need a minute just to kind of sort out what's going on here. Because I thought this, but I got this. I don't think anybody would have blamed Joseph. But we don't have any indication that Joseph ever takes his eye off the prize. He never stops trusting in God. And here's why I think he does that. Can I share why I think he does that? He's lowered his bar of expectation. Everybody understands that disappointment is just unmet expectation. That's all it is. I thought this, I got this. That's disappointment. But Joseph, in the 11 years that he's been in the lemon factory, has figured out, you know what? Things might get worse before they get better. They have. And I might have to go through some more stuff. I don't know what's going on in your life. I got to get us to, if you got a cup and some bread there, get ready. We're going to finish with some communion. But I just wanted to leave you with this. No matter how things go, no matter how high your hopes get and how far they're dashed, God is still at work in your life. And just because your timetable isn't his timetable. Like anybody praying for some kids who are kind of off the ranch with God? I got 2 of them. Have you heard me talk about them? Yeah. Did I think it would last this long? For my son, it's been 8 years that he's been away from Jesus, right? Not away from our family. We still love him. I'm meeting him for lunch. And I'm going to tell him again, he needs Jesus. But in the early days of his rebellion, I was kind of lost at sea. I didn't know how this was going to work out. And to be honest, I still don't. But there's a difference in Mark early days and Mark now. And here's what it is. I've come to the point where I've let go of my expectations of what God's doing with my kids. That's his business. My business is to love them, to teach them, and to be ready for their return. And I am. And I pray it's today. And I can't wait to share it with you when it happens. But until it happens, I'm with Joe. I will wait patiently for the Lord until he inclines and hears my cry. And he lifts me up out of the pit and out of the miry clay. I want you to do that too. And here's why I know that we can. We serve a Savior who did that for us. He walked through the worst. Jesus says this to his disciples as he's teaching them in John 16. He says, in the world you'll have tribulation, but take heart, I've overcome the world. And Peter, the disciple of Jesus who had some off moments, he writes later in our Bibles to a bunch of Christians who are suffering. He says this, beloved brothers and sisters, do not be surprised at the trials when it comes upon you to test you, as though something strange is happening. It's not strange. It's to be expected. Hard things will come. He says instead, rejoice insofar as you share Christ's sufferings, that you may rejoice and be glad when his glory is revealed. I can't wait. Anybody here? Can't wait for God to have the glory of his son revealed to us. Can't wait. It can be today. I'll go. Anybody else want to go? I'll go. Okay? But until then, lemons. And through the lemons, we look to the one who walks with us through all of them, our Savior, Jesus Christ. Will you stand with me as we remember him?